I was a 17-year-old high school student at the time. It all began on my spring break when my friend Kathy and I were home bored alone watching videos on YouTube. We somehow stumbled across the video on the board, and it seemed pretty interesting how it would answer questions. So I suggested to Kathy we should buy it and play it tonight. She was against it due to her Christian beliefs, but she agreed to do it anyway. Besides, we had nothing better to do that night. After going to 4 different stores and striking out, we found out we can create a homemade one, so we did that instead. I was an only child, so it was just my mom, dad, and I. My mom was out of the country and my dad was an overnight manager at a gas station. Once it turned 10 p.m., he was gone, and we took the board out in my living room. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we live in a typical Texas ranch, so we didn't have any neighbors or anything close as they were acres away. Anyway, we took the board out and began by asking it some simple questions. And I shit you not, it really did move on its own. Neither her nor I pushed it. So after 20 minutes of what seemed to be harmless play, we decided to ask, "Is there anyone here?" It moved to yes. We both looked at each other with adrenaline as though maybe it was time to put it away already. Big mistake. Kathy began having some sort of seizure type episode which creeped me the fuck out and made me panic. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help her. She began foaming at the mouth and whatnot. 8 minutes had passed now, and after 8 minutes she started gaining her consciousness and coming back to her senses. We tried putting everything away. As soon as we put the board away, all of my pictures on the wall fell on the floor at the exact same time. We both started screaming. We had the feeling as though something was not right. We definitely weren't alone. I grabbed my car keys and told Kathy to make a run for the door when suddenly we heard some echoing voices. Whatever was there had us locked in as we couldn't open the door, and then suddenly it all stopped. Kathy began to cry. "Kathy, get up. Let's go, we gotta get out of here," I said, and before I could even finish, I heard a loud knock on my door. I legit felt like my guts were ripped the fuck out of me. I approached the door slowly and I signaled to Kathy to stay quiet. And what would someone be doing in my ranch in the middle of nowhere at midnight? "Who is it?" I said. "Open up, it's me." It sounded like my mom's voice, but wait a minute. My mom's not even in the United States right now and won't be home until another 2 weeks. "Please don't open it," Kathy begged. I called my dad to see if he knew anything about my mom coming home early, since we heard her voice at the door. "Lock all the doors, go shut the windows, and go hide somewhere safe. Now, hurry," he said as he called 911 as he was on his way home. I tiptoed my way to the back door and peeked through the hole, and I saw multiple black silhouettes. I ran upstairs with Kathy as fast as I could. "Kathy, what's wrong?" I asked her as she looked pale as she was going to have another one of her episodes, which made me 100 times more terrified. I heard a car outside and it looked though as my dad was finally home. He rushed upstairs, hugged us, and asked us if we were both okay. And then he asked us what had happened, so we had no choice but to confess. I was so scared, I didn't care how much trouble I would have gotten in, as long as we got rid of whatever was in that house. He contacted a local that knew about these things, and eventually we did get rid of it. Ever since, my dad kept me on a short leash to assure I would never do anything stupid like that again. But trust me, that was the first and final time I will ever fuck with one of those. I don't like talking about these things, as I feel talking about it still brings it back in my life. But I feel like for future educational reasons, I probably should. They are as real as you and I and should never be played with. And please let this be a firm warning, never go near one of these. It was in the fall of 2012. A couple of friends and I were curious, so we bought one at a local store who surprisingly sold them. We agreed to meet at my friend Alma's house that night. It was 5 of us: Alma, Norma, Helen, Alex, and I. None of us had ever used one of these boards, so before we did some research on the internet. Now, I'm sure you've all have heard the basic stuff already, so I'll spare you the boring parts as the real story begins after we used it. Basically, the whole cliche, are you real? Can you tell me your name? Who are you? Etc. Nothing really happened the whole time we were actively playing it. Later that night as I got home, around 12ish midnight, I got a call from Alma and she said, "Hey, why did you want me to call you?" "Huh?" I said. "Yeah, you told me to call you 5 minutes ago here before you left, right?" "Alma, what are you talking about? I left your house an hour ago." The whole vibe changed. Chicken skin on my body, and I can hear her fear sinking as well. "What the fuck is going on?" she told me. She asked me if I can go back to her house and stay for the night, as she lived alone and she was very scared. As scared as I was, Alma was my best friend and I couldn't just leave her alone like that. When I got to her house, she was in her room crying, telling me she heard several voices in her room screaming, "Do it, do it, do it, do it." Her house definitely had a different vibe as before. It felt cold and eerie. I don't know how to explain it. But nothing else happened for the rest of the night, as well as for the next couple of weeks. And I thought that was it. I was wrong. One night I was walking in home from work when I heard my dog wasn't barking. That's weird, he always barks when I come home from work. As I walked inside the kitchen, I can see my own fucking dog laying dead on the floor with a little bit of blood coming out of its nose. Heartbroken and terrified shitless as to what the fuck happened, I ran to the living room to grab my cell phone to call my boyfriend to tell him what had just happened when suddenly something tugged my shirt from the back. Nobody was in the house. Something pulled my shirt. I don't know, I can't explain it. I just started to get these voices in my head, or maybe even outside my head, I don't know. The voices sounded all too familiar. Do it. Do it. Do it. This dark feeling of sudden depression and confused thoughts to my own existence. You know, suicidal thoughts. I literally ran to the kitchen and grabbed the closest knife I saw and held it to my throat, contemplating my life. Suddenly, the voices got significantly louder. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. This was not inside my head. This was external. I was literally seconds away from doing it when suddenly Alma and my boyfriend ran inside and immediately stopped me. I didn't do nothing but cry. I was so confused and full of emotions for no reason. I couldn't even recognize myself or my own way of thinking anymore. Alma hugged me and she told me the same thing was happening to her as we both cried. Our other friend Alex had reported to us hearing the same exact voices. The following week, Alex got in a very bad car accident. Although it was nothing too serious for him as far as injuries. Immediately that night, Alma and I began to sage in and out of our houses as well as each other. Other small paranormal events happened before and after, but nothing worth mentioning. Once the voices had stopped, life kind of fell back to normal again. I gained my mental health back and we left all of those things in the past. As to how my dog died will always remain a mystery to me, but I don't discard that the entities had something to do with it. I should also mention that in that whole 9-week period, Norma lost her job and got very ill. Alex got his car totaled in a terrible accident and luckily he was okay. Alma got terrorized by the entity as well as seeing shadows in her home. Helen totally changed after that event. She got very traumatized and never told us what happened to her. In fact, she stopped talking to us altogether. And as for me, I had many misfortunes happen to me in that 9-week window, but nothing as bad as the main event itself. Like I said, I moved on. I don't talk about this anymore with anyone. But I hope I can use this platform to please tell you it's not worth it. Hello there. My name is Benji, and this is my short experience of playing with the Ouija board. About 7 years ago, I still lived with my family in the New England area. It was my 3 older brothers and my parents. I was 23. One December night, a few days before Christmas, my parents were out of town for the night, so it was just my brothers and I. My older brother Thomas suggested we play. I mean, we've all heard the stories and seen the videos, so we just wanted to see what the hype was all about. Mind you, prior to that, I have never had an encounter with a ghostly phenomenon. As much as it seemed like a good idea, it also felt like a very bad one. We began to play. "Is there anyone here in this house?" we asked. Suddenly, the little thing started moving and none of us put any pressure on it. Jim jokingly said, "Maybe this is just a battery-operated game." It's not. It started to move to Y-E-S. It spelled yes. This wasn't so fun anymore as shit got real. We immediately put the board away as Thomas began to vomit, and then out of nowhere, the TV turns on and off like 10 times. When it finally shut off for good, the 3 of us saw a reflection on the TV. A reflection as in it was not from any of us. Now, you might think that I'm loony, but I'm really not. The best way I can describe what I saw was a skinny figure with no face. Just pale skin and no features to it whatsoever. It started touching the screen with both hands as though it was going to pop through. We ran out of the house as fast as we could and we stayed at our uncle's house for the night. Nothing really happened to us after that night, except I kept getting private phone calls for like 3 weeks. When I answered, it was just static sound. Then it would hang up. I've ever since changed my numbers, and who knows, maybe in the future I wouldn't be opposed to trying it out again. I should maybe add that we were pretty stoned that night, but I don't completely dismiss it as the conclusion.